Okay, good evening, everybody. I hope you all can hear me. John Crook coming to you live. This week's episode is live for the fourth installment of Communications and Cigars. We are doing a little different. We are streaming to our Facebook page right now. So maybe some of you are actually looking on our Facebook page right now, and others are actually probably watching us live here on YouTube. So sorry if every once in a while you see my eyes kind of divert towards the bottom down there, but that's just to make sure that the stream is going well. It is working here, and so far it appears to be working. If you are joining us, by all means, go ahead, drop us in the chat. So if you're on YouTube, drop us in the top chat there. You can just go ahead and drop a message. Please interact with us. That's what this whole thing is about. And then if you are viewing on Facebook, post a comment on there. Don't be afraid to post on there and stuff like that. So, all righty. So, welcome to the fourth episode of Communications and Cigars. We kind of started rough about a month ago now, and now here we are. We're kind of doing it a little bit more. Just kind of, getting that kind of this fun thing going. And I guess, I'll start out with this episode. A lot of people have asked, they said, well, John, what is your point of Communications and Cigars? You started this. What is it? Is it a review show? Is it a YouTube show? What is it? Is it a Yazoo show? Is it a radio show? What is it? And to be honest with you, it's just a chance for us to get together and chat. And that's why we're starting to explore some more things. That's why we're starting to go ahead and get into, doing this more on YouTube. We're trying to get some things set up to be streaming, to be a little more interactive on there. But the main focus of Communications Cigars is to be non-branded, non-manufacturer specific, and just to kind of talk about communications, just fun things about communications. I had one person that described it to me. They said it kind of feels like after they get done with a ham club meeting or something like that, sitting around going for coffee and just chit-chatting about it. No club politics, no nothing like that whatsoever. Just basic chatting. Hey, how's it going? Oh, cool. Hey, communications about this and this. We did an episode or installment. I think it was our second one where we went along and we talked about Nextel. Like, just that's a random thing. No one really talks about Nextel and push to talk over cellular systems. And then last week's, it was recorded. Sorry, we couldn't get the streaming thing, but it looks like we got it going now here. Last week's episode installment, we talked about like features that you look for in a radio or a scanner. And I kind of went over some of the things that I look for personally. Once again, that's what I look for personally on there, not necessarily what you may look for, but those were things that it just, was kind of there. And tonight we're going to talk, I thought it would kind of be fun, and a few people said it, to talk about what method or kind of form of communication you like to use the most. And what I mean is I'm talking not like a mode like, voice versus data or something, but actually to talk as in like, what do you like to use? Do you like to use amateur radio? Do you like to use GMRS? Do you like to use FRS? Do you like to use business band? Those kind of things like that on there. And it's really interesting because for all intents and purposes, let's say, a lot of times communications systems or options of usage are going to fall into a couple different categories. And those categories are really dependent upon what your need is. So I thought it would be kind of fun to talk about that. And I see some people coming into the chat here. So Ben, good evening, John. And good evening, everyone else. Smoke Signal RF, good evening to you too, sir. Anthony, hey, can you please explain IPO setting on Yazoo? Okay, we're not talking about brand specific stuff. That's something else here. We're not going to be talking about that. The next discussion was great. Thanks, Smoke Signal. I had a good time. As a matter of fact, I went actually back inside after that episode, and I found my old, I think it was i365, and that was one of those that was more of the rugged, durable ones that I actually bought a fixed antenna. So you didn't have that pull-up antenna, so it was kind of a fixed antenna. So it was really kind of fun in there. But because it's Communication Cigars, we're always going to talk about communications. We have to go ahead and do our cigar discussion. So let's start out with our cigar discussion. Tonight, I am smoking a Soul Fry. I hope you can see it in there. Soul Fry. It is by, and I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it Cao, C-A-O, or is it Ko? I'm not 100% sure. And I have to give a shout out to my wife, K9BIS. She went along and she found some of these for me because we didn't know how things were going to start up with COVID and doing traveling, if that was going to happen again, or more importantly, maybe I might be on call or something like that, and I have a few minute break at the station. I want to take it. These are nice little cigars, sort of like almost like a borderline petite Corona. It has a let's see how they described it. Cinnamon whiskey flavor. Cinnamon whiskey flavor. I taste the cinnamon. Not too much of a hint of whiskey, but as I finish it through the episode here, we'll go ahead and find out if I start slurring my words. So, with that, that's what I'm having tonight. If you are having a cigar, that's one of the requirements. Remember, communications and cigars, we're outside here. If you are smoking a cigar and you are tuning in the chats, please go ahead and write in there what you're having on there, because I know a lot of people have a lot of different cigars, and you know what? Hopefully someday we'll get back to being more free and moving around, and maybe there's going to be a chance somehow, some way, someday we can all get together, and maybe at a ham fest or maybe at something there, we can all get together and have a cigar and kind of do maybe even, hey, even better, a live group communications and cigars on there. So check it in there. Not Wild Cascade Radio. Sorry, I don't have any of my glasses on here. New live stream. Thank you. I'm glad everybody's doing that. Izzo's the Cigar King. Don is a good Cigar King. I do have to admit that. I know when I jumped into one of the shows, he was smoking a cigar that night too. I think it was the September. Was it called the September Happy Hour? I think it was. I think Ham Radio 2.0 put it on there and stuff. So I appreciate him letting me come on there. So, all righty. Okay, cool. All right. So let's get into tonight's subject. And once again, it was hard to say because, it's not really a mode. It's not a type. It's a license class, maybe, whatever, of communications. Now, this is the cool part about communications. And mind you, if you are tuning in from, let's say, outside of North America on there, I'm not sure what you have for communications on there. Good example, they have the PMR, I believe it is, band over like in the UK, which happens to use 446 frequencies over there. So, and I know that's why their amateur band is like 430 to 440 and stuff. So I can't necessarily comment on anything outside of North America, nor would I want to. Okay. But a lot of it's going to be like, what are the license classes? What are the types of licenses tonight are based in North America? So let's start out with the top. Obviously, we'll go alphabetical because it's easy to remember right now. We have A for amateur. So amateur class of license. What is the amateur class license? Well, we all know amateur radio. You can't use it as a business. You have to get a license, all that fun stuff. Now that people know about amateur radio. I got an amateur radio. I think I was on our first episode that I did, kind of told you how it was a bittersweet kind of thing, largely because of my grandmother being sick. And I was young and I had to stay and help with her. And it was kind of one of those deals where I was like, man, it's just kind of something that, amateur radio was a great friend. It was a great learning experience. It was something to keep me busy, something to keep me occupied in the whole deal. So, but one of the things we know, we can't do business on amateur. I remember when I got into amateur radio, it was one of those things where, man, we were like right at this cusp where, man, if you ordered a pizza on auto patch, man, the FCC was going to come down on you. And, it was like the radio police and you were just going to be done for it. You were just going to be done for it. Don't even argue. You're going to be locked away and in whatever Sing Sing, okay, or something like that, a massive prison on there. That's kind of sort of changed a little bit. We still can't do business on there, but they've become a little bit maybe more lenient with amateur radio in regards to those kind of things, because before there was always that gray area of, hey, if I'm going to tell the wife, hey, you want to pick up pizza for dinner tonight, and you're having a general discussion, well, did I just conduct business now? So that's that kind of thing. But amateur radio is great. It's really great when I was doing travel. Sometimes when I go up to visit my dad, N9 VAO, I'm not sure if he's on here tonight or not, but it's nice. It's something to have in the car. It's something to listen to. Listening with the scanner is great, but sometimes you just want to talk. You have interactions, those kind of things. That's where amateur radio fits really, really great into those kind of aspects on there. But once again, certain limitations with amateur radio. And we're not talking about the limitations of class, just kind of saying, how I kind of view it. Obviously, the next one that we're going to talk about then is the FRS, which kind of segues into GMRS. Okay. And FRS is the lower power, kind of like almost like they were the itinerant channels, sort of for GMRS. Okay. A lot has changed with FRS. At one time, it wasn't really meant for business. Now they kind of relaxed the rules, and we can read all about that. We're not going to get into rules here tonight and everything. But FRS was kind of fun when it first came out for me. And more so was fun because I bought a couple of radios because I was working at Best Buy at the time. So we got great discounts back then. I'm telling you, it's like almost like 20 years ago, we got great discounts. I don't know what Best Buy gives now. But anyways, FRS radios were out there. And there were a ton of them. There were Motorola. There was Cobra. There was Midland. And I know a lot still exists today. But there just seemed to have been, back at the time, a plethora of FRS radios that were out there and available. And I had some FRS radios, and it was great because at the time, my wife, she was my girlfriend, fiance at the time, she did not have an amateur radio license. So to talk from vehicle to vehicle, we had to find out something that we wanted to use. And then more importantly, then there would be a few times that we traveled with her family. So then we were like, well, how are we going to communicate? Well, we had these FRS radios. Well, with the popularity of obviously FRS radios, that really, really started to take off. And now what's happening is that FRS radios, they're just jam-packed. You want to do a fun experiment. I don't know how many obviously live in Minnesota, Wisconsin, but one of the interesting things I always do is I always go to Mall of America when I get a chance, and I always bring the radio with because I will listen to the FRS channels, and they are just busy and jammed. And I'm sure people can go ahead and say, hey, here's the deal. Listening neighborhoods, the kids are always hitting the call buttons. That's all you hear on the FRS channels and stuff. And I do hear some actually business. Surprisingly, I hear businesses in where I live here in the village that I live in that are actually using FRS for business purposes. And I'm just like, factories and that kind of thing. I'm like, oh man, is that really a good thing to do? So before FRS to me was kind of cool. Now, not so much, in my opinion. But once again, that's my opinion. It'd be interesting to see if you use FRS radios here. So let me open up my screen here a little bit more so I can start seeing some of the better comments here. But yeah, so I mean, do you use FRS? I'm sure a lot of people are going to probably put in that they use amateur radio and stuff like that. But do you use FRS? And if so, drop it in the comments there. With that, let's also then go ahead and take a look at GMRS. Now, I had a GMRS license before, and I have a GMRS license again. And I'm actually starting to really like GMRS because I think it kind of is giving that middle of the road communications where you don't want to get a license for amateur radio operation. You're not doing business. So you need communications, let's say between family members or something inside there, or you can communicate with other GMRS users. And I will tell you this, I'm actually surprised, hands down surprised is the best way to put it, on how much GMRS is having conversations to have conversations. And what I mean by that is we think GMRS communications as, sometimes people will describe it as, general mobile radio service. It's really internal family communications, but you have more power and you have, the ability to connect with repeaters and stuff. And that's how I hear some people talk about GMRS. When I had a GMRS license years ago, I got it, and it was just kind of like, I just let it sit and didn't even use it, as a matter of fact. I just kind of let it sit and expire. And because it was just like, who was I going to use it with, or who was I going to talk to on there? Because it really wasn't a QSO thing. It was like, hey, yeah, there's a few repeaters, those kind of things like that. Now, listening to some in the Twin Cities or going online, and there's a couple different GMRS websites that you can go into. You got to be, some Facebook groups and stuff, but some actually have live streams on there. And it's really interesting to hear because obviously I'll turn into the Midwest hub, which GMRS is like linking like with sort of like all-star-ish kind of connections and stuff like that. And they're all linking together, creating their own networks and linking GMRS repeaters together and grouping and regionalizing them. Now, that kind of, from what I've talked to some people and just kind of curiosity, that has really sort of turned into a left Twix, right Twix kind of thing, where there are some people are like, I'm not on a QSO for GMRS. I just want this and this and this and this. And then the flip side of the coin, or the right Twix, people are saying, I have GMRS to keep me occupied. I don't want to get an amateur radio license, or I have an amateur radio license and nothing's happening on the local repeaters. So they get on there and they have QSOs, but it's actually kind of amazing. And the fun part, I think, with GMRS is I hear a lot of friendly communication starting to take place on there. So that kind of awestruck me. Was like, man, from when I had it back like in the early 2000s to now, it's just day to night, really. So GMRS is kind of, like I said, interesting on there. Comment section here, I see the comments are popping up. Wow, good night. Or wow. So with that, GMRS is another one. I'm going to move on to another one now that is kind of sort of I don't want to say almost a kept secret, a kept quiet kind of area or band. And that is going to be MURS, multi-user radio service. So MURS is basically a couple of the old, what do you want to say, the VHF business frequencies. So I'm going to date myself, and I'll look in the comments to see who knows. But back in the day, there was a store called Radio Shack. Already I'm going back. Right? Radio Shack used to sell some rebranded Motorola radios. And if anybody in the comment can remind me, they were the gray, they kind of look like a cup that kind of got smashed. So they were kind of had almost like a weird oval shape. And some had just a volume knob and a little stubby antenna. And then some you could select a channel on there. But what they used to do is they used to put them on dot frequencies. And there was like blue dot, red dot, gold dot, all those kind of dots on there. And a lot of those dot frequencies turned into is what they call the itinerant frequencies. But a lot of them got used was 154, 600. And then there was a few other ones. So 154, 570. Okay. So some were able to get licensed on that frequency. Some like businesses, structures, they would just apply to the FCC and they would have high powered licenses. Now I'm talking 5 watt or handhelds, maybe 20 watt, 50 watt mobiles, those kind of things like that. But as time went on, the FCC said, well, let's create a multi-user radio service. So they're specifically going to be set up for VHF. They're specifically going to have 5 channels that you can use. And there's going to be restrictions on the channels you can use. So they're only supposed to be 2 watts of power, supposed to be fixed antennas. There's a lot of stuff. If you want to get bored, you want to go, you're having a hard time going to sleep tonight, go ahead and look up the FCC parts 90, 95, 97, all that fun stuff. We're not going to debate that here, okay, tonight. But they created that. And in all reality, they're really cool in those frequencies because, believe it or not, 2 watts on VHF, and especially in the open range, like, I'm Wisconsin, 2 watts on VHF, man, that's going to go pretty far if you're in an open range and stuff. And I know a lot of people will use that hunting because I will have the MURS channels locked into my radio in scan, whether it's my business, public safety LMR radio, or even my amateur radio. I'll scan and I'll listen to them, and they're really active, and they're active by businesses, and they're also active by users. Now, one of the thing with MURS, if you look at the FCC rules on MURS, I will say this: if you are using it and there is another licensed business, company, entity, whatever on there, you're supposed to yield to them. Okay. But you do have the ability to use PL tones or DPL tones, or if you're not familiar with them, that's CTCSS and DCS tones on there. And you have, once again, 5 frequencies to choose from. You have 151.820, 151.880, 151.940, 154.570, and 154.600. So replay the video, put them in there, and you'll just be amazed at how much traffic you'll hear on them, especially if you're in big metropolitan areas. You're going to hear those a lot. That's my problem. I talk too much on the show, and what do? I go ahead and do that. All right. Before we move on to business, let me check some of the comments here. Good evening, Coke Zero. So I shout out to Endolf, Coke Zero in hand. Some people do not want to do cigars, so some people are joking. Communications and a Coke, communications and a Coke Zero. I did have one person say I'm going to do communications and a Pepsi. I'm like, that doesn't roll off the tongue like communications and a Coke, but hey, we'll work on it there. Let's see. Okay, so TNCT, the local Quick Trip uses FRS. Yes, they do. So see, that's the funny part, talking about FRS. So now that a lot of places, the FCC said you can use it for business, a lot of places are using that for business. Now, I'm going to tell you something. If I'm going to run a business, I personally may refrain from using FRS as business communications. We're going to get to business communications in a moment there, because there's a wide variety that we can go into on business communications on there. But in that regards, yeah, it's kind of weird that they do that on there. Let's see. Yeah, not a lot of GMRS activity in some areas. Yeah, some people have been taking them down. Yeah, preppers are kind of doing it on there. Let's see. Brian, hey, you got to go. Hey, yeah, 3:30 comes very early morning. Thanks for checking in. Thanks for stopping by this evening there. Weren't they also known as red dot or blue dot, color bands around the antenna? So smoke signals, yeah, that's sort of where they came from. And as a matter of fact, if you look at some of my radios, sometimes you'll see tape on them, because if I have an antenna that looks very similar to a VHF or UHF, I'll do that. And that's where they kind of came into some of those colors on there. And actually, if you go ahead and take a look, I've seen a couple of good what do you want to say, web pages, I guess, that you list what the old frequencies used to be, because I think UHF was usually like star frequencies, if I remember, like gold star, silver star maybe, and then dots were VHF. I'm sure someone will correct me on there too. Let's see. Good evening, Chuck. Evan, good evening. AJ, good evening. A smoke and a pancake. Yeah, that's funny. Because was it last Sunday or the Sunday before? I was gonna have a cigar and a crepe on there. So if anybody doesn't know, go ahead and look at, what was that, Austin Powers Gold member? I think that's what it was on there. Communications and an iced tea. Thanks, Jeff, for checking in. Sweet tea. Yeah. Hey, Jeff, is it sweet tea or is it cold brew? What kind is it? Or is it regular tea on there? So let's see. Ice cold water is about all I drink anymore. Just doesn't sound right with no show. Okay. So let's go on to business communications. Now, the reason I say business communications is because business communications are unique, and I don't want to neglect business communications, because what I've actually started to see, more and more people actually going out and getting business licenses for, per se, more of sensitive nature communications. Now, the reason is that there's no requirement. You don't have to have a business to get a business license. What they'll say is that with a business license, it's the whole point is being, conducting business. Now, with that, it also refers to the part of the band that's not public safety, that's not amateur, that's not a government, military, something like that on there. Good example. We talked about some of the MURS channels. If you look at the MURS channels, 151, 82, 88, and 94 are interlaced with a lot of, excuse me, like in Wisconsin, a lot of DNR forestry frequencies and a lot of public works frequencies, or I should say county maintenance and stuff. You'll find a lot of them in the 151s and 159s, and that's their splits of the repeaters. Usually they'll either go in on 151 and come out on 159, or vice versa, depending. Okay, but it's unique in that matter how that happens. But as you see, they're kind of interlaced. Same thing, 154 600. 154 600 is only about 300 kilohertz away from our output of our fire repeater here for our fire departments in the county that I live. Okay, that's interlaced. So that's kind of what I mean by business band frequencies. Now, we have a plethora of actually business band frequencies. Some are itinerant, means we have to share with one another. And then we also have some which kind of, you can go through a frequency coordinator, and it's not like a repeater coordinator where you ask for frequency and they give, and there's no money. Business frequency coordination is going to cost you a little do, re, mi, okay? But you can put up your own repeater. You can do simplex frequencies. You can do itinerants. So do you want a simplex frequency, which is going to, you put a pin on the map and you go there, Or do you want to be able to go around the state? Do you want to go around the nation and stuff like that on there? One thing I will say about business communications on there is that when you're looking at business communications, you do have a little bit more leeway. And what I mean by leeway is you can do analog, you can do digital, you can do encrypted, you could do non-encrypted. I'm not going to hire, deny, or lie in any way, shape, or form. I have business band licenses. And the reason I have a business band license is for numerous reasons. But one of the reasons I'll do it is that if my family is going somewhere, or maybe they're even playing locally, with all the different people that are on FRS in my neighborhood and how I can hear the local like factories close by and stuff like that, I don't want my kids being on FRS. Now, this may go ahead and cause a little disturbance with some people and heartache, but I'm just telling you how I do things. I have a business license for, once again, business purposes as well. I've had them for years and years and years and whatever. But when my kids go out in the neighborhood, now I can put them on a digital channel. And if the radio has GPS capabilities, I can even ping them, see where they're at. I can put them on a secure channel. So meaning if they're calling me and they're asking, hey, can I stay by Susie's a little bit longer? Or they're going to say something which I don't really want to go over FRS channels or GMRS channels, or they're going to understand, they may not understand the GMRS process of license, call sign, all that kind of thing like that. And it's not going to fit into amateur radio operator because they haven't taken the test. This is where I will utilize business systems, the business frequencies on there. In addition, business frequencies, or sometimes referred to as LMR, also too, has an advantage. LMR, you can have a multitude of systems that are out there. You can have conventional, you can have trunked, you can have multi-network, multi-sited, other things like that. So really, when you're looking at it, business communications will allow you to do a little bit more, than MURS, than FRS, than GMRS, where you can't really encrypt. You can't really say those things on there. So that's kind of where it's interesting to come into play, because like I said, each one is going to suit a need. And I know there's a lot of people out there like me that are like, hey, I have a business license, I have a GMRS, I have, an amateur license, I have this and this and this and this. And one other thing I forgot to talk about, and I apologize, I just see it on a private message here, CB radio. CB, let's talk about CB real quick. It's kind of that unforgotten thing, unspoke of kind of thing on there. But, some interesting things going on with CBs right now. As we take a look with the FCC, there's talk about allowing FM on there. A lot of truckers have it on there. When I've done traveling, for many years, I always have my scanner and I always make sure that I have the CB frequencies programmed in there to be able to listen, on there. Because lots of times truckers will call out accidents, truckers will call out bear traps. Not that I speed, not that I'm not admitting that I speed or anything like that. But there are times where it's good to get a heads up. And as, more and more public safety systems are going, trunked and encrypted and everything like that, you may not be able to scan or listen to some of there. And believe it or not, there's a lot of, I will say this is the one interesting thing about CB radios. There are some CBs out there, manufacturers that have an integrated CB radio and a digital scanner in there. So I'm like, that's pretty cool, because not only can you listen to weather, you can listen to other things on there. So it eliminates a couple things in the car if you so want a CB and want a scanner in there. So with that, yeah, CB is kind of almost going through this kind of redevelopment, like, CB radio 3.0, I would say. And the reason I say 3.0 is because if you look way back when CB started, you needed licenses and everything. Then they kind of abolished and did away with that. And when they did with that, I would almost say that's like CB radio 2.0. And now we're doing CB radio 3.0. And I know there's a lot of people, like I said, I know there's a lot of people that actually take part in CB radio. And that's why I almost forgot about it. And I thank you to the message on there. Now, I see some people asking questions. I see some messages popping up. Hey, what about like sat phones, or what about like other things like that? Yeah, those are phone. I'm talking tonight here like the traditional sense of radio usage. A microphone, a radio, an antenna, that kind of thing like that. That, for mobile usage, or a handheld radio that actually transmits, and doesn't use cellular networks and is independent of, network things. Like, it doesn't, once again, doesn't need cell phone or cellular service, doesn't need Wi-Fi, doesn't have to connect into a system to link to another system if you don't want to. They could be standalone on there. So I see a lot of chats happen in the box. Okay, great. Anybody? What does everybody say? I mean, I see a few people have said that they're use CB. Amateur radio in here. So if you got, pop in the comments here, see what people are saying. Let's see. I see a few people popping in there. So CB call size, that was always the cool part. And Ben, I see your dad had a CB license back in the day. My grandpa and grandma on my dad's side, and I think maybe even my dad, maybe, I'm not 100% sure, but they had CB licenses, and that was always the cool part. You had to come up with the handle. You had to go ahead and come up with a CB handle. And I never played on CB that much, so I really can't tell you like what I would use for CB handle, but yeah, I'd have to think about it. Cigar one, how about that? I don't know. Let's see. So taking a look. Farming is going strong around here right now. Plenty to monitor. Yeah. So I know. I hear that a lot. Actually, I think I've heard more. So probably that's a good point to bring up. GMRS. I've heard a lot of farmers are using GMRS just to communicate back and forth in the field there. Not necessarily for business, but like more so of like there's a repeater that's kind of, it's unpublished. It's north of me a little bit, almost northwest a little bit. And it's got to be a lower power repeater or lower height repeater and stuff like that, because it's very hard to copy unless I get it like on the way end of the north side of the county up there. But I do hear some farming activities on there. So yeah, that's people are using that there. So Jeff says, we used to practice CW on CB when my CB buddies and I were working on getting our knobs. Well, there you go. That's a really great usage to kind of combine there. Just showed my age, didn't I? No, age is all relative. Age is all relative. So and if I had a CB license here in the UK, 15 pounds a year. AM and CB was AM and CB was illegal. We could only use FM. Oh, okay. End off this. So that kind of brings up. That's why I said earlier at the beginning, I'm not going to talk about that. It's interesting in other parts of the world what is considered CB. So for me, when I'm talking about CB, I'm talking about the 27 megahertz range where it was AM and single sideband usage. Now I know in the UK, and correct me if I'm wrong, Endolf, what is it? Is it they're in the 440 region or something, I think, over there. So I think their CB is actually in the UHF range. And it's the exact opposite, where it's FM, but there was no AM single sideband on there. But yes, UK CB was FM on there, and I thought I think it was I want to say it was like 446 region or something like that too. But that's where that PMR stuff also kind of came into play too. I know they did a lot of that, and actually talking about digital modes, which I've had a few people that have emailed me, and I said, hey, have you thought about doing the discussion on digital modes? And yeah, I guess that's an idea and something like that on there. So PMR, so personalized mobile radio, and it was basically sort of, I don't know how I can really describe it kind of easy in layman terms. It was like MURS sort of to a degree, but they used like the 446 band, and they were really splintered frequencies, and it was FM. But then they came out with DPMR, which used like an FDMA digital format of a means of communication, and then they really got splintered. And okay, so Endoff, thanks. That's over in the UK. Endoff is saying PMR is 446, CB is 27 megahertz. Okay, there you go. There you go. So yeah, so it was really interesting how they did that. So they kind of created like an FRS band, I guess you can almost say, on there. It's really interesting in the world how really we've used the different frequencies, or how we classify the usage of frequencies. Like I said, tonight we talked about, from the US side of things, or the North America side of things. So FRS is, the 460, I think it starts at 462, 5625, and then goes up 12 and a half kilohertz stepping. So kind of, as I sometimes will call those splinter frequency channels, which are interlaced between your GMRS channels, so that's kind of how we use FRS GMRS over here. In other parts of the world, they may not call it FRS, they may not call it GMRS, but they have somewhat of the same similar characteristics on there. So one other band, I just see a message just popped up on the screen, is what about Marine? Okay, yeah, I guess that's Marine. There are limitations to Marine. I'm not going to go ahead and go all FCC mode police on here and stuff like that, but there are certain things about Marine. You got to use it, either when you're on the water, or your was it ship to shore, or shore operations impacting ship operations, or something like that on there. I do know there are a lot of people who, unfortunately, bear hunting season is starting up here in Wisconsin right now, or even in session right now, even. And I always hear a lot of people who illegally use marine band radios use marine band radios for hunting in the woods. I don't know why they just don't do that. The worst part about it is I think, I know this is going to create they're using bow fangs, and they're programming with marine band channels, and they're going in the woods. And I'm just like, guys, like, come on. I was like, I told them, I'm like, program for FRS, program for MURS or something, or hey, I will help you even get a high powered radio and stuff. Like, nope, we're good. Okay, not gonna argue with you. Okay, TNT. Yeah, a lot of hunters use Marine VHF in my area too. I have no idea why they do that, but they do. So Johnny Wad would be a kick butt handle for me. Thanks, Shacking Greg. I don't know. We got to come up with that. Maybe that's what it is. Next time you can go ahead and send in something on there. Let's see. Well, it's just kind of going through, see if any occupies a free and free sequence in the States, asking for a friend. What occupies it? I think the PMR frequencies are 446 megahertz. So technically, that would be our 70 centimeter amateur band out there, is what I think it is. I know a guy who works at Standardized and calls them for bad. Alrighty. Well, I know a guy who knows a guy and asking for a friend. All righty. With that, let me check the watch here. Yeah, I've been rambling on enough here. I've been on for 37 minutes. People have asked me, they said, John, if I got an idea for a show, or I want to give you a comment, or I want to say something to you, what can I use to get a hold of you? So you know what? Here, if you want to get a hold of me, you can reach me at n9upc@yahoo.com. Once again, n9upc@yahoo.com. Now, let me just tell you something. People know all the stuff that I do and all the activities I'm involved in. If you're going to use that email address, please only use it for stuff here for the show. I don't want to see work stuff come there and anything like that. I have work email addresses separate from that and stuff like that. But if people do want to get a hold of me, you have an idea for the show, throw it in the comments on here if you want to. I want to thank everybody that tuned in here. It seems like maybe we got things going now, so we're going to try to go ahead and continue to do this live. As I did the practice live stream yesterday, there are probably going to be some times where I'm going to have to do a recorded episode on there, just because of activities and stuff like that, and work schedules and family and life and everything like that. But I will try to do it as live as much as possible. We probably are going to stick to the YouTube platform here, because it looks like it's a little bit easier to do it on YouTube here than it is. And maybe some people don't have Facebook and stuff, so that might be a little bit easier there. So as I'm done with my cigar here tonight, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the 4th installment of Communications and Cigars. It's great to see so many people active in the chat. It really is. This is what this is for. People chatting, saying hi, just chatting about communications, and that's what it is. We don't do a lot of talking anymore. It seems like we're all so busy, or we have so much going on that it's hard to do it. And with everything going on, I know some clubs have gone back to doing Zoom meetings and stuff like that for the rest of the year. And while it's great to see people on video, there's something to say for interaction, and not even doing interaction for like a club purpose or business purpose, just kind of chit chatting here and everything like that. So, everybody, thank you for tuning in. It does mean a lot to me. But once again, if you guys have anything you ever want to talk about or anything, let's do it. I already had a kind of an idea for next week's show, which I'll kind of give there. It's something I talked about once before, and I think it's a pretty good thing to bring it up. And it's going to be entitled, What is Your, I called it hamitude, but better, what is your radiotude? So what is your radio attitude, AKA, what is your radiotude? That is going to be next week's installment where we can talk about it and maybe see how we act, how we remember where our roots came from. So until then, everybody, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. Have a good evening. Stay safe. And we'll catch you next week.